Yes, first of all, we really thank you about the rest of the situation that Israel government after the tragedy. What was your first reaction to the shipwreck that Israel military did?
Well, with the help of the Almighty, we are coming as representatives of Jews true to the Torah, true to Judaism, from around the world. From the U.S., we're a delegation, from Canada, originally from Palestine, Rabbi Shavanta.
Yeah.
And the point is that it has been as a knife stab in our hearts. This is, again, just one more tragedy, one more link in a long chain of tragedies since the State of Israel was ratified, since Zionism came up to Palestine.
You were very active since the beginning of the whole tragedy. Some rebels in Washington visit our embassy to pay condolences. And now you're here first in the big Charlian meeting. After then, you are yesterday at the hospitals. What's your main goal? Why are you in Turkey right now?
Well, Turkey is the perfect example of a Muslim country and a Muslim and Arab country that has always befriended Jews and been exemplary hosts for the Jewish people, and to show that this has nothing to do with religion. This is not a religious conflict.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years we've lived together without the United Nations or human rights groups to protect us. This has nothing with religion. That is a ploy, a false portrayal of the State of Israel and Zionism to legitimize what they're doing and to glean support from the world for their existence.
Yeah, okay. People here in Turkey trying to understand the difference between your movement and its contradiction with Israel government. Can you describe it to our followers?
With the help of the Almighty, we will try. Judaism is a religion, a spirituality to serve God, thousands of years old. Zionism is only around 100 years old. It is the transformation from religion to nationalism, to materialism, created by non-religious Jews who hated the religion, and they really didn't want Judaism. They didn't even want to make their state in Palestine, only in Uganda at the first meetings. The reason they used the name Israel, the Star of David, hijacking, stealing the identity of Judaism and the Jewish people, is in order to get a legitimacy for their existence, that people should say, oh, it's God given to them, and that they should put fear and intimidate people from speaking up against their actions because they'll call them anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
There couldn't be anything further from the truth. As I say, the best friends of the Jewish people is Turkey. The best friends of the Jewish people is all the Muslim countries who've helped the Jews all the time when they ran away from their problems in other lands. So how could you say this? It's something totally different. It's a political, selfish, flawed movement called Zionism that has no legitimacy to exist. It's against the Torah. Maybe just say one thing. It's against the Torah in its essence. The concept for Jews to have a state is expressly forbidden in the Torah, in the Jewish teaching, since the destruction of the temple 2,000 years ago. We were told by the Almighty in a prophecy of King Solomon, and that we are forbidden to have our own entity, our own state, our own kingdom, even in an uninhabited land. And this was held by all Jews around the world for thousands of years, and it makes it worse, compounds the sin, the crime in having the state, because this State of Israel that these nationalists made it in Palestine, made it in a land that was inhabited by the majority Muslim people, by the Palestinian people. So to steal their land, to kill, to oppress, to banish them from the homes, it flies in the face and contradicts everything of the Torah that says thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, that one has to emulate God, be compassionate. So they've used our identity to rebel against God and to desecrate God's name, and to create a rift between Jews and Muslims, and to make a river, an endless river of blood for the Muslims, for the Palestinian people, and anti-Semitism for the Jews, and death for the Jews also. This is
Welcome back to Hardball. We're back with the 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter. His new book is called Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid. And President Carter, why did you use the word apartheid in the book's title?
Well, let's look at the entire title, if you don't mind. The first word is Palestine, which involves the land that belongs to the Palestinians, not the Israelis. I didn't refer to Israel because there's no semblance of anything relating to apartheid within the nation of Israel. And I also emphasized the word not, that is peace and not apartheid. That's what I hope to accomplish with this book, is some move toward that goal. But there's no doubt that within the occupied territories, Palestinian land, that there is a horrendous example of apartheid. The occupation of Palestinian land, the confiscation of that land that doesn't belong to Israel, the building of settlements on it, the colonization of that land, and then the connection of those isolated but multiple settlements, more than 200 of them, with each other by highways on which Palestinians can't travel, and quite often where Palestinians cannot even cross. So the persecution of the Palestinians now under the occupied territories, is under the occupation forces, is one of the worst examples of human rights deprivation that I know. And I think
even worse, though, than a place like Rwanda?
Yes, I think, yes. You mean now?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think the impression now of the Israelis, of the Palestinians by the Israelis, is worse than a situation in Africa like the oppression of Rwandans and the Civil War.
I'm not going back into ancient history about Rwanda, but right now, the persecution of the Palestinians is one of the worst examples of human rights abuse I know, because the Palestinians...
When you're talking about right now, you're not talking about, say,
I'm not talking about ancient history, no.
Well, Rwanda wasn't ancient history, it was just a few years ago.
You can talk about Rwanda if you want to. I want to talk about Palestine. What is being done to the Palestinians now is horrendous in their own territory by the occupying powers, which is Israel. They've taken away all the basic human rights of the Palestinians, as was done in South Africa against the blacks. And I make it very plain in this book that the apartheid is not based on racism, as it was in South Africa, but it's based on the desire of a minority of Israelis to acquire land that belongs to the Palestinians and to retain that land, and then to exclude the Palestinians from their own property and subjugate them so that they can't arouse and demonstrate their disapproval of being robbed of their own property. That's what's happening in the West Bank. And the people in this country, in America, never know about this. They never discuss this. There's no debate about it. There's no criticism of Israel in this country. And in Israel, there is an intense debate about the issues in this book.
What purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Madam Speaker, good morning.
Good morning.
Permission to address the House to revise and extend.
Without objection.
Wake up, America. We have trillions for a war machine and the banks, while our government stands by and sniffs at the slaughter of innocents in Gaza, where Israel is blocking aid for wounded Palestinians. Here's today's Washington Post. It says the International Committee of the Red Cross said Thursday that it found at least 15 bodies and several children, emaciated but alive, in a row of shattered houses in the Gaza Strip, and accused the Israeli military of preventing ambulances from reaching the site for 4 days. 12 corpses lying on mattresses in one home, along with 4 young children lying next to their dead mothers. That's a quote. Today, U.S. tax dollars, U.S. jets, and U.S. helicopters provided to Israel are enabling the slaughter in Gaza. The administration enables Israel to press forward with the attack against defenseless civilians, blocks efforts at promoting a ceasefire at the UN, and refuses to make Israel comply with conditions that arms shipments not be used for aggression. Israel is going to receive $30 billion in a 10-year period for military assistance without having to abide by any humanitarian principles, international laws, or standards of basic human decency. Wake up, America.
I know Senator Obama understands what is at stake here. It has been an honor to contest these primaries with him. It is an honor to call him my friend, and let me be very clear. I know that Senator Obama will be a good friend to Israel.
You also see our commitment to Israel's security in our steadfast opposition to any attempt to delegitimize the State of Israel. As I said at the United Nations last year, Israel's existence must not be a subject for debate, and efforts to chip away at Israel's legitimacy will only be met by the unshakable opposition of the United States.
Well, hello and welcome. I'm Marzia Hashimi, and thanks for joining us for another face-to-face. Today, very happy to welcome our guests right here in the studios in Tehran, and that would be Ms. Cynthia McKinney, who is joining us. And of course, she's a former congresswoman in the United States and also a former presidential candidate of the Green Party.
Tremendous pressure inside the political process to make sure that the voters stay aligned inside either the Democrat or Republican parties. Why? Because both of those parties have been captured by special interests. And those special interests are, quite frankly, the antithesis of the interests of the people. And so therefore, for example, if people in the United States care about education, but unfortunately there's a banker that gets in between the student and the student's ability to go to school, if they care about health care, there's the insurance industry that gets in between the patient and the doctor who is seeking to provide care. And so we have all of these special interests that have positioned themselves in between the political decision makers and the people themselves. The process now is more responsive to those special interests than it is to the values and the wishes of the American people. When the American people then decide that they are sick and tired of this kind of configuration, the only place to go so that one's values have the likelihood or the opportunity to become policy is outside of the corral that has been built.
Did you experience anything in that realm as far as what one would call the interference in American policy by AIPAC?
Well, it's interesting because when I first went to Congress, I did not go to Congress to pay particular attention to any area outside of the black community that I represented that was in need, and of course U.S. Africa policy, which was abhorrent and unfortunately still is. But what I ran into, I bumped into at almost every turn were these special interests. And there's no more special interest that has any more influence than the pro-Israel lobby. And so then when I did outreach, for example, to the Muslim community in the United States, I bumped into the pro-Israel lobby, which of course does not want to have to contend with a politicized Muslim community, which is as large as and is as wealthy as the pro-Israel lobby is in the United States. So yes, I first-handedly and also frontally was assaulted by the presence of the pro-Israel lobby to such an extent.
Physically assaulted?
Well, politically assaulted,
okay,
to such an extent that my father had to ask the question publicly, what does Stone Mountain, Georgia have to do with Israel? What I was doing was servicing the needs of my constituents, and I was not allowed to do that because I did not toe the line on U.S. policy for Israel.
What line is that they wanted? Were you told directly that you had to toe a line, or explain that to me?
Well, every candidate for Congress at that time had a pledge. They were given a pledge to sign. And I was new on the scene. And so the pledge had Jerusalem as the capital city, the military superiority of Israel.
American Congress people have to sign this pledge?
Yes, you sign the pledge. If you don't sign the pledge, you don't get money. So for example, it was almost like water torture for me. My parents observed this. I would get a call, and the person on the other end of the phone would say, I want to do a fundraiser for you. And then we would get into the planning. I would get really excited because, of course, you have to have money in order to run a campaign. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the planning, they would say, did you sign the pledge? And then I would say, no, I didn't sign the pledge. And then my fundraiser would go kaput.
So, well, I just want to get into this pledge a little bit more. So this is basically something that is mandatory, that every congressperson has to sign, saying that, what, Jerusalem, you said, is the capital of Israel, and what else?
You make a commitment that you will vote to support the military superiority of Israel, that the economic assistance that Israel wants, that you would vote to provide that.
This isn't a question for the congresspeople serving, that they are representing, or they're supposed to be representing, the people of the United States, not a foreign country, and yet they have to pledge allegiance to a foreign state.
That's what
no one questions this.
That's what I was asked to do. And I made it public. This probably nobody had said anything about it, but I made it public, and then, you know, the excuse was, well, you know, those were just overzealous advocates for Israel. So then the tactic changed, and but this is what is done for 535 members of the United States Congress. 100 senators, 435 members of the House of Representatives have to now write a paragraph, which basically says the same thing. So it's not a pledge, but it's a paragraph, and you post it, and, you know, there are these forums you have to go to at the synagogues or whatever. And then, you know, if you don't perform appropriately, then you don't get money to run your campaign.